Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Rich Schevener back with you for Get Writ Live, our live stream series here through the Writing Center. Hope you're all doing well. It's been a good few weeks, I'd say, right? We're getting into just after reading week. Hope you had a wonderful reading week, a good time to recharge the batteries and plan out the rest of the term. So this week's topic is the value of slow writing, which we'll talk about and pretty extensively throughout this. But before we begin our topic, I want to discuss a few items with you. First of all, I owe you all a little apology. I came down with a sudden illness during the live stream on February 16th that I had to the point that I had to abruptly cancel the stream on you all and my guest. And again, my apologies to all. That was very strange. I've never had something happen like that. I was on the stream and literally just felt ill and had to just utterly cancel it. So that being said, though, I'm really excited to continue conversations on reviewing anti-racist publishing practices and editorial guidelines that we started getting into just before the stream was actually canceled. So stay tuned for a special video, I'll just say, featuring an interview with Jessica Taylor and Louis Mnuba, who are editing and mentoring contributors for a new journal, Environment from A to Zine, as part of a humanities capstone project at York. And so we've rescheduled an interview to take place kind of asynchronously, and I'll be posting that on the YouTube page leading up to it. But yeah, that was a little unfortunate. I just, again, like these sort of things just randomly happen. So I had to jump off air, and that's one of the, I guess, challenges of when you're doing your own kind of broadcasting, right? You've got to be flexible that way. But I would say check out that stream just because there is still interesting information on there about like journals and editorial practices. The only thing that you're actually missing is the interview, which is kind of unfortunate. And yeah, I mean, it lasted for about 18 minutes. And then I just literally had to end the call. So again, my apologies. Doing much better now at this point. Happy and healthy and excited to come back to campus tomorrow to meet with students, which I'm doing actually for the first time the entire term. All right. And a couple other sort of things just to foreground with the meeting before we get started. I'd like to once again thank Writing Center Director John Suffern and the Writing Department for supporting another term of Get Writ Live. If you'd like to see past streams, you can check them out on our YouTube page, which you're at now if you're watching this live. And then the Writing Center's page, we also have linked, which I have here. These will be going on through the rest of the year. So like I said, last week or before reading week, we talked about anti-racist publishing practices and editorial guidelines. This week, we're talking about the value of slow writing. And then we have Writing with and Emotions. We'll have a special chat with Sarah Tarkov, who is a good friend of mine and is also a very established writer out in LA and has written numerous books and scripts for TV shows. So check out that call as well. We'll be doing a little bit of hype for that in the next week. Also, all the things that are listed on the Writing Center page, we have various writing supports, so drop-in specialists, as well as accessibility specialists, a multilingual studio, graduate student writing, our stream, of course, and then one-on-one appointments. You can always sign up for those, whether you want to talk about initial ideas for an assignment, you need some interpretation help on the actual assignment and the goals you're trying to accomplish with it, as well as feedback on, let's say, a pretty much complete draft, things like that. They can help you throughout all the stages of this. So be sure to sign up if you haven't done so, especially as we get, past midterms and start thinking about finals. All right, so let's get into our topic for the day. Like I said, it's the value of slow writing. A lot of writing and really digital writing is composed and distributed so rapidly. 240 characters on Twitter, 1-minute videos that you can post on Instagram, images with captions and links and profile bios, as we also see on Instagram, news updates on your CBC app, right, which we're getting all the time. I'm getting all the time on my phone. More blog posts than you can count. Blog posts on blog posts, right? Link backs and so forth. The speed of digital writing has been really in high gear for some time now. So, what's the value of slowing down, of doing slow writing, practicing that? What about a both and approach, using speed in more than one way? If we're so hyper focused and so speedy about posting and we're reading quickly, what's the difference? What would it be like to sort of slow down in a lot of ways, to really think through what it is we're working on, for perhaps better projects, right? There is a value in doing things quickly, right? Working on deadline. You've seen me even do this on the stream where I've played games where I have to actually write quickly, and I can't stop writing, right? That could be really good for flow, right? Getting things out there on the page, free writing for a small amount of time and never putting your hand away from the page. It could also be really valuable. But how about the other way of purposely slowing yourself down, chunking things out, planning your project, I guess more intentionally? So I got this idea from the stream from a few scholars who have written about slow writing, and I want to pull up a couple just to call them out. There's a book that's come out recently in the last few years called The Slow Professor, which is on challenging the culture of speed in the academy. And this is, largely directed at professors to kind of slow down, despite, sort of clocks we have for tenure, right? We have 5 years, 6 years, in my case, we have to get a certain amount of things published. So there's a kind of implicit expectation to be speedy, even though we're told to kind of, to slow down and just have a really steady pace of work. Knowing that sometimes editorial timelines and so forth force us to work a little more quickly, right? We have short windows. They're still encouraging us to slow down. So one quote that I have at the very beginning at the preface of the book, what we might think about is, slow professors advocate deliberation over acceleration. We need time to think, and so do our students. And this is why I wanted to include this quote. Time for reflection and open-ended inquiry is not a luxury, but is crucial to what we do. So how could we, advocate more for that deliberation rather than acceleration? How do we give ourselves more time to think? And that's by Maggie Berg and Barbara Sieber, who are the co-authors of that book. Before that book came out, my former doctoral mentor, Laura Mitschke, had this to say about what she calls slow agency. It's derived from this idea of hypermiling among drivers. So hypermiling was this movement that came out a number of years ago when gas prices were very high in the United States. And so these kind of advocacy groups, if you will, or hypermilers, as they call them, or talking about things like removing, excess items in your car, not driving over the speed limit too often. I mean, I'm kind of grossly under summarizing what this is about, but because I want to get to what she has to say about it. If you can read more about it in the article, if you want to, it's in the description to this video. But in that article, she's referring to working as a writing program administrator, but we can import her ideas into planning and writing essays. So here's what Laura R. Mitschke had to say. And I'll just read this back to us all, but how would I get everything done if I spent more time getting places? You could think about that in the way of getting to point A to point B in a project. It was nearly impossible to imagine a different daily pace when I ticked off the many responsibilities, competing for my attention and energy. Despite my initial apprehensions, I have come to appreciate the way hypermiling calls serious attention to the arts of productive stillness, resource preservation, and slowness, what hypermilers, that is drivers, call gradual arrival. So when she discusses resource preservation, she's talking about our own resources, our bodies, our energies that we bring to projects, whether it's driving or completing something in writing. Now, in a 12-week term, to you, this idea of slowing down might seem like an absurd thought, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I even tell my students that it's a very quick term that we're working with sometimes if we're doing multiple projects. But, as you likely have weekly short essay responses, midterm exams, and final projects to do in those 12 weeks. But what I take from Mitchke's article is that stretching out larger projects is crucial for self-care and what she discusses as gradual arrival. Um, so how do we start doing that kind of stretching out of larger projects? What are some strategies we could think about as writers? Do you slow down quite a bit when you're working on projects? How do you go about doing that? These are things I'd love to know if you have any ideas in the chat. I think one way to frame slow writing, though, is through project management. For example, do you parse out parts of a writing project? I'm going to work on, for example, when you're given an assignment or starting a new project, do you work on the introduction one day or for the week, and then the conclusion on another? Do you allot a certain amount of time per day on a project, or just the project in general? Or do you find a lot of energy in that kind of ticking deadline, that clock, right? Ticking clock. You have something to do the night before, so you work on it because it just gives you a lot of inspiration, things like that. What is, I guess, your way of approaching it? I'd love to know. But what I want to show you is my own writing calendar that I have here. And I'm going to invite you to write with me in just a bit to plan out a project that you're actually working on. I admit I have to do the same, right? And I think just slowing down to actually look at the larger project and plan it out beyond just writing an outline could be really helpful for concentrating on a particular piece, preserving our energy for, let's say, the introduction, or just research time, right? That we want to give ourselves. Otherwise, we might be going too quickly and not really taking in the views, so to say, of our own work. Okay, so here is my calendar, and I'm going to show you this because I think that it gets at this kind of issue. Like, I'm not quite sure that it's really stretching the writing out, but it's at least working on some kind of calendar, right? And maybe you do that too. Maybe you put things on your own calendar. I certainly have a lot of stuff I put on mine. Just to quickly kind of flash it over, and I'll put it. I'm going to show you a different Excel sheet, but all the different things I have with work and home are on here, and I have a kind of hashtag I put my own writing on to know what days I'm actually working on my project. So you can see, like, it's a bit difficult to see here on the screen, but let's see. Yeah, like so. They're all dated, different days. I can look back at them. I started using that hashtag to actually remind myself that this is a writing project I'm working on so that I could search for it later. But that wasn't quite enough for me. It's a bit too busy. I needed something that was more focused on the task or the project in general, or all of my projects, I should say. Okay, so let's pull that up. Okay, it might be a bit difficult to see, so I'll just show you. And that's one thing I like doing about this stream is just showing everybody some of the things I'm working on, some of the things you might be doing as well. And let's just turn to the chat for a second. And hello to Dia. She says, I tend to dedicate an entire day for research and the outline. Then I do 1 hour sprints of writing the drafts. I give a couple days between each revision. Okay, so you will try to get through the entire draft in that 1 hour or so, just to maybe start from top to bottom. Yeah, that's one thing I'd love to know. So and while we're chatting, I'll just show you all. Here, let me zoom in just a bit more so we can see that. So what I do is I kind of put out publication, the title of the publication, the due date for that publication, and then the status. So recently, like a colleague and I resubmitted an article to Communication Design Quarterly. We said we wanted to do it by March 1st. I think that's been completed. So I could just say done for now. And then it could change it later on. We just finished this white paper too, which kind of coincided with this one. So we can mark that pretty much as done at this point. Got to hold on just a little bit longer so we know when that was submitted. I have something on March 15th. I have something on the 31st, and then a couple things coming up after that. So a lot of things kind of in the can, right? But for me, this just helps me understand like what's coming up, what's kind of on deck, and then what's in long term. So this kind of comic studies article I was working on, I've been tinkering with for the last few years. I know that their next round of reviews come out in August, so I have a lot of time to work on this. Um, a couple of sort of TBD things, that have come out. What's nice is when I do this, I can filter the dates up at the top in Excel. Um, Never really fancied myself as an Excel person, but for planning projects, I find it really, really helpful. So that's one thing. But the one thing that's missing in this is I can see the dates, but you know, this doesn't give me any directives for when to work on tasks or how much time to commit, such as like Dia's 1 hour sprints. I could say, okay, I got to finish this article by the 15th of March. Where do I need to schedule my time in to, let's say, work on just the copy editing part or just the references? Now, I've been doing a lot of that already, so I'm kind of bypassing that just a little bit. But, the next thing I could probably look at is this chapter I'm working on, which is due April 1st. Like, I can actually plan that out a bit more. And let's just turn back to the chat as well. So Dee's saying, depends on what I'm writing. If I'm well-versed in the topic, I might be able to do the entire draft in one sitting. If it's something I'm exploring, then it might take a few days. Yeah, so love those ideas like that. Depends on where you are in the project or what you know. And maybe what I can do is think about this project I've kind of got cultivating a little bit. These are kind of revise and resubmit ones. I'm still in the early like data collection phase of this project, this virtual reality project that is kind of informing what I'm seeing up here. So I've got again, a little scattered when I'm working on projects, but they're all interconnected in some way. That's a whole another topic, of sort of mind mapping and seeing how they connect. But you'll just have to take my word for it at this point. Yeah, very interesting. So where do we commit our time is really the question we have to be thinking about here. Okay. So what we'll do is I'm going to do my trusty little timer for a couple minutes. That we'll kind of do. And let me just turn on the little ticker so in case you're joining us, feel free to. So what I've done, and I encourage you to do, is you can do this on pen and paper if you like. And again, we'll do this for about 10 minutes as a group. Again, if you're joining and hanging out later on, feel free to do the same. I always set my little timer on the right here in a Google search. And then in an Excel sheet, piece of paper, Word doc, you can just make a small table, sort of 3 columns, and then fill it in as you go. But I've done writing task, date of work or hours, and then the kind of deadline. Now, deadline may be a little difficult because I'm not talking about completing the task. I'm just talking about the overall project. So, for me, I've got June 1st as the big deadline. I want to try to submit the entire article. So what I might do is just say this is kind of the pressing one, and let's see, how can I do the centering of it? Yeah, so I know that all of these are going to be due on June 1st, right? All right, so I'll just kind of mute my mic for a minute. Maybe I'll punctuate that with the chat, but feel free if you're starting a project or you're exploring one. How could you take what you have due in the next few weeks, for example, and parse it out into tasks and days of commitment? And this just again is for the purpose of slowing down and looking at a particular section of a piece or particular tasks. So I'll set the timer, and then we'll just jump in as you want. Okay, cool. I should say too, I just titled the project at the top so I know what it is I'm actually working on. Okay, so we got that timer. There we go. Okay, so we just have just a couple of minutes left. About 2 minutes. If you're just joining us, we are working through a potential planning of a project to kind of slow down and think about how much time we're going to commit to a task. For me, I have a long deadline. It's June 1st. It's my self-imposed one. I want to get something out. I'm going to start now. I've already been working on it. I'm kind of catching myself up, but I'm planning for some future things. Okay. 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Let's see what we can get done. Okay, so how'd it go? Hope you got some things down there to work on, some ideas. So let me talk to you about a couple things I was thinking about and some kind of thoughts that occurred to me as I started going. I didn't want to really disrupt your flow too much in this. But yeah, for me, I wanted to kind of think about these a little more intentionally. So I will hide these so that we can just see them. Oh, that doesn't work. We need to kind of, stretch it out. Does that help a little bit? Yeah, maybe that helps show them a bit more on the screen. We do what we can, right? Okay, so I said, I'm working on this sort of project about writing, virtual reality. So I have my project task, I have date of work in hours, and then the kind of big deadline, which is the one I'm setting for myself, like it's June 1st. So I'm going to start getting there. So, what this kind of prompts me to do is not put it off closer to that date and then just kind of working it out organically. There's a value sometimes in doing that, but even saying, I'm just going to kind of slowly approach this and work on parts of it, not in a hurry to get there. If I get this project done, great. I can change the time. I could speed up a little bit when I need to. Maybe there's going to be, something I go out of town for a bit, something like that. Another project comes up that has a quicker deadline. I can change the pace, but if I start with the assumption I'm going to go slowly, it's going to be easier for me to speed up later on. So starting with this, starting this week on Friday, for example, I'm going to look at literature on virtual reality and writing. So kind of doing a literature review, quick kind of collection of that, making some notes about it, trying to understand what that conversation is. Not writing, just reading, right? Which is part of the writing project. This is something I've talked about with colleagues pretty regularly. And then the next task is to review more journals. So for potential submission, I find that's really helpful in the early stages, right? It's just kind of seeing who said what already in particular journals. So it's one thing to do the research, but if you're thinking about putting something in publication, whether it's an undergraduate journal or a graduate journal, or if you're tuning in and thinking about more sort of faculty submissions, uh, looking at, have they published anything on VR lately? And if they have, what have they said? And is that a good way to kind of intervene in a project? So I try to get that foregrounded in my mind. That's the kind of picture or the destination I'm going for, is submission to a journal. And so if you're looking at, what the larger deadline is for an assignment, again, looking at the overall assignment description and maybe chunking out accordingly that way could be really, really interesting. So I'm just saying 1 hour. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I could stretch this out for kind of an all-day thing, but again, I've just said I'm not going to rush my way around different journals. I might just spend that 1 hour reading one journal. When I submitted something to a journal called College English, I spent an entire day just reading that's an entire work session, 2 to 4 hours, just reading that journal. I say the past 5 issues of a journal, skimming through, sort of seeing what's been said. So I could actually change this as I sort of am talking about it. I'm reminding myself to maybe I can slow down even more. So I could say, look at one journal's approaches to or previous work on VR, writing tech, etc. What else have they said? What else is out there? The next thing is it's more about data collection, but creating this kind of video draft of all the recordings we've been doing. So a colleague and I, Dr. Beth Keller-Vela, have been recording our screens as we've done these sort of sessions. And I'm thinking that one thing that might be good for the article or for just data collection in general is to just, try to come up with a prototype quickly of a video we're working out and see what it looks like. What do we reveal? What's revealed about the project when we just start working on a prototype? How can we mess with it a bit and see sort of what it shows us, right? So again, giving yourself time to explore a bit on a particular day could be useful for your data collection. And continuing the screen recording. So this is another thing that I planned out in that 10 minutes is, I'm going to do it on these particular days, right? And it's going to be every other Friday until April 22nd. I have to give myself a cutoff so that I can shift gears, so to say, to use that kind of driving metaphor, and get to that June 1st work. So it's in March 7th, and I didn't say how many hours I would do that. Probably a couple, usually Mondays are my research day. So let's just say 3 hours. We'll try to make something like that. Make one compilation of the recordings. So after I've done that, then I need to start kind of rendering it into something that could be usable. And this is more, I guess, on the task. I didn't list that. Drafting for multimedia, we'll just say. Coming back to that literature review, right? I need to kind of filter these a little bit, but March 11th, I've given myself a week to think about it, and I'm going to come back to it again. It's iterative that way, right? We might want to circle back to our previous routes that have worked for us. We might have missed something in the landscape if we're thinking about that kind of slow driving. Slowly approaching writer projects means we can come back to it recursively, right? So, and then, maybe after that, writing an intervention statement, an early intro comments. Here's what I'm seeing in the literature, and here's what I think we could do with it, right? It's just some kind of brainstorming that we're in. And then on March 18th, we'd spend roughly like an hour or a couple hours working on the first pass of a literature review. So I'm realizing that my Excel sheet is a little funky in terms of dates. But maybe I'll just say 3 hours kind of writing that. I tend not to go more than a few hours on a project for a particular day, just so I can give myself that mental break, shift tasks to maybe doing teaching or other projects, just because I find that just like driving all day, my parents live 8 hours from me, 7.5, 8 hours from me. If I just do that straight through without any kind of breaks, I'm gonna be pretty exhausted by the end. Back aching, things like that. Those long trips can be a little taxing on the body, just like sitting at a desk all day and working on a project, a particular task, particular writing project can also be like that. Um, so a couple ideas that we've got working there. But yeah, what's come to mind for you for particular tasks? Do you have ways of doing this? You set the amount of time you're working and you set the date too. I find that's just a way for me to know um, that I can maybe do some other things and then come back to it. And I could also schedule various projects around these dates too, so that maybe I have multiple trips, so to say, planned um, in terms of writing. Okay, so what we'll do now is just take a few minutes break, maybe just 2 to 3 minutes, like we do here in all the streams. So feel free to do that, and get up, stretch, get out of the car, so to say, and then we'll come back and think about a few other resources and apps that could work before we close out the stream. Okay, be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. If you're just joining us, we just took a quick break to talk about the value of slow writing. And I think about slowing down. We're on a roll, maybe working on writing projects. What can we do to slow down our processes with the goal of eventually getting from point A to point B? So one thing we talked about was project planning. Just before the break, I was showing off just this project sort of task calendar, if you will, committing dates of work and hours to projects. Maybe you did a little bit of that as well, with the larger deadline of getting there by June 1st. So we did some 10-minute writing. We talked about some of the literature that's out there on slow writing that I encourage you to check out. Thinking with the Slow Professor, book by Berg and Sieber, and then For Slow Agency by Laura R. Mitschke. And what I want to talk about now is just a few more specific kind of apps that may be useful for you all. There are a lot of great web resources out there for managing projects large and small. I've linked them in the video description of this stream, but one that I want to mention here is a project planning sheet by a Reddit user who was participating in National Novel Writing Month, which is typically in November. So let's check that out for just a second so that you can see what it looks like. And here it is. This is linked in the stream too. Yeah, it should be. I will post it here into the chat just in case you don't have it. Okay, so this is a sheet that they kind of developed just to keep track of their progress and so forth. So I've amended it a little bit. As you can kind of see here, it's mainly about November, and it's about the sort of data sources and things like that. So it's kind of taking that real quantitative approach to how many words do I need to produce, and how can I kind of slow down as I go, if I need to, right? So if I need to produce a 2,000 word essay, how many words do I need to produce? This kind of sheet is going to do that work for you. What I will share with you is the one that I just kind of tinkered with a little bit to fit the conversation we're having. So I think you need a link. Let me see if I can, and then I'll probably change it anyways later on. But I'll just make it view only, and you can make your own copy if you like. Okay, and here it is in the chat too. I think I'll just share this one in the chat since it may not last that long in the video description. But this is mine that I've updated. Let's see what this other one is that I have. There's a different one out there as well. A couple different things. And this is all just looking at the larger project, and we want to see sort of where we're trying to get to. Okay, so this is one I just changed, literally last night. Again, it was based on the word progress count that this particular author shared on Reddit. So let's say that, typically they're saying, try to write 50,000 words in 1 month. That's huge. Like, that just seems impossible to do in a month for me, at least. So let's just say I'm only working on a 3,000 word essay. Maybe that's like where you're at. It's telling me not to change it, but we're going to do it anyways because I can always make another copy of this later on. Yesterday, I didn't do any work. On then. So we're just saying, okay, 0 and 0, right? And what's kind of cool is this formula is already going to give you hopefully graphs and so forth so you can kind of see. So let's say that Dia or somebody else is working on their project and they do a 1 hour sprint and they're like, hey, I got 736 words done, right? And then maybe the next day, you just do some reviewing of research, you draw in a quote, like a block quote or two, and you get 76 words. It's going to start giving you that running total. Friday, you had a good research day on Thursday, so you get maybe another page done, right? Single space or something like that. This gives you yet another thing. another sort of thing, and it's going to keep showing you that count, and sometimes it can even tell you how much you have left, right? You could even edit this in that way. You don't do any work on Saturdays, like I certainly don't. So, I try not to do work on the weekends if I can help it. It might be different for you if you have a class on Mondays. So you took that sort of low gear approach. Maybe you went to the writing rest stop, right? Stay that you're writing sort of Airbnb. I'm just using those travel kind of metaphors very poorly. You come refreshed and you decide that next day you're going to do another 500 words. And then the next day, it's kind of, I have ups and downs when I'm writing. I'll do a lot, and then the next day I'll review what I've wrote. Sometimes maybe I'll only do 25 words. And then who knows, maybe the next day you cut everything you just worked on. So then you cut it out. It's going to, show you that as well. And then we have a great day the next day. We do 6,000 or 600 words, right? We get really close to our project. And then finally we cross that, get to that destination by, the next Monday. We've had more time to think. And we get to 400 words and we've, crossed that goal. So this is one thing you could think about. You could, even write this in a more, I guess, anticipatory way. You could say, here are the dates I'm going to be working, and each day I need to get this much done. So today I need to do 500 words. And what's nice is if you plan it that way, that can actually take some pressure off for you. If you try to, you may not always meet that goal, but you could say, today I'm going to do 1,000 words. Maybe you end up doing 1,200. Or if you say low, I've talked about this on the stream too. I keep my totals really low so that sometimes I can go, all right, I only have to do 75 words today. So if I'm trying to do 200 words a day, and I go up some, the next days I can kind of scale back a little bit. I can go into cruise control before that deadline so that I have more time to think about maybe line editing, right? Sentences and so forth. And this is another one I'll just go ahead and put into the chat as well. You can view this link. This is another one that I thought was really interesting. This takes an even more quantitative approach. And kind of back to what we were seeing in my calendar I was showing you while we were taking a break. This will break out like all kinds of different stuff for you. So again, if we said like I need to do a 2,000 word essay, and then my goal is to do 100 words, something like that. My daily goal, for example, like on, we'll just say the second, right? Which is today. So let's just say I want to do 75, and I ended up doing. I'm just thinking of random numbers. So I worked for 4 hours, and I only, but I really concentrated on those. I still got like about half a page done, 178 words. It tells me the total I've finished so far. It tells me how many words I've composed per hour, the percentage, how many words I have left, and how many days are left. So you could, in theory, reorganize this, and then it will sort of, it gives you even predictions, tells you how much is complete, your average. I mean, I like this one a lot too, because it shows me progress in different ways. How far, I've come, how much I have left, what my average is. Sometimes I don't really care much about average, but I like those, percentages and so forth that show me kind of progress. So again, reframing this to meet any project you're working on. You could even add for your notes to self what the task was or what the task will be for the day. And again, that might just let you relax a bit on a particular day and not feel defeated when you're not producing that many words. It's okay to be a little slower on some days for a variety of reasons. Okay, let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, so I have just a few minutes left here on the stream. All right, so I showed you that. I also, like I said, linked to a couple other resources. Let me just find where those are. These were on our in the description. All of these ones have free trials. I didn't want to sign up for it, but I just wanted to call your attention to it. Maybe you've used it before, but Asana is one that I see all the time on YouTube in various ways. But it's about, as they sort of say, work on big ideas without the busy work. And what it allows you to do is really assign different tasks to various team members so that you can achieve these projects. Let me just play what this looks like so we can see. So the big thing that you have here are timelines that you can work out. And again, that's just really helpful for when you're working on big projects with teams. So it shows you the calendar, it shows you who's doing what, you have conversations within there. I think I'm a little more old school in that sense. I would rather just do it through Google Sheets and kind of calendar invites. But I know this is immensely useful for a lot of teams that are small and large. So for group projects, this could be useful for chunking out tasks. There's also Trello, which is similar. And there is WRIT too, which has been also promoted by writing companies or writers as well for tracking projects, noting when they're completed. It just holds everybody accountable for their various projects. And I think sometimes slowing down is just taking in the larger view of where you are in terms of tasks and things to be completed. So these kind of project management systems, web applications are really useful. Also, there's a professor at the University of Guelph, not far from us, who had a great video on project management for your writing projects. And you can even see that Monday is another thing it's linking to here, but this is also just a great overview, about 13 minutes or so, about priorities and deadlines and how to map them out. So Professor Dr. Jodie Salter has some really great suggestions that you might want to check out too. Okay, we've talked about those. What I want to leave you with is this last discussion of scholars that kind of inspired this talk. And again, I wish I had time to speak with them more in like interview processes and so forth. So I want to mention one more scholar who inspired this episode. It's Jonathan L. Bradshaw, who has written about what he calls slow circulation when thinking about the circulation speed of news and public opinion. This is kind of going back to one of my primary interests and discussions of this stream is digital writing. And I want to read a passage or two that we might think about, just to kind of paraphrase it. But as he goes on to say in this article, major social changes are rarely sudden, and the slow circulation here accounts for that rate of rhetorical effect. To put it bluntly, many of the speedy viral circulation models with which we are so comfortable as frames for digital media are unfit for the types of rhetorical work some small-scale regional and community advocacy groups aim to do. And so he's talking about the ways in which some media producers, through case studies and so forth, approach the circulation of information slowly. And the case studies that he has here are media producers in the Appalachian region of the United States. And it's just about this idea of strategically thinking about persistence rather than rapidity. So it's really another focus on pace, right? Maybe we're going to send things out once a week at the same time every week rather than several times a day, right? For a different kind of effect. So the article goes on in great detail about, that definition of slow circulation and like I said, gets into these case studies. In addition to affirming that creating a timeline for a project might allow us to focus more deeply and slowly on parts of a project, I think Bradshaw's article reminded me of something simple we might try if we're working in social media. So if you're doing that for a class, a campaign, and so forth, What can you do to maybe think more slowly about this? I think it's about scheduling posts. That's one thing that it quickly comes to mind when I'm thinking about this. So if you write 5 blog posts a day, maybe that's one of your expectations. Or tweets in one day, right? For, let's say, a student organization, or again, part of a project for a class. Do you have to send them all at once? Where do you put them when you're thinking about them? What might happen if you say post once a day or at a particular time? I'm thinking particularly about TweetDeck. This is something that I remember I was working on a long time ago when I was doing some news work and publications as a journalist. So I have to log myself in just so we can see it. Twitter handle. Let's make sure this all works. Wow, I did it the first time. Let's see. Did it come up? Might take just a minute. But what it allows you to do is schedule posts. So, I do this even with my email is if I want to think about something for a bit and then come back to it later, what I can do is schedule, an email to be sent in a few days, and I can look back at it later on. So what you can do here is schedule your tweet if you log into TweetDeck. This is actually by Twitter too, so it's pretty cool. And I could, write my post, and then I could say tweet it at this particular time, or I could set the date. And I've recommended this as well for student groups who, maybe they have had a little bit of challenging sort of time with committing time to social media. And so if they're just doing it when they're actually there as a group, for example, on Fridays, I know one meets, maybe they could just schedule them all out at that point, or come with a draft of all of them and then schedule them during that meeting. And then it kind of takes care of itself. You can focus on another part of a writing task or a project, and maybe come back to it as if things change, right? Something's been canceled. You're not in a rush to make the updates, right? Okay. So that is one thing to think about. But information can be more powerful when we're more mindful of time rather than acceleration and quantity. And that won't apply to everything. Again, even the scholars I've talked about in this acknowledge that there are some challenges with saying, I can't always slow down on this. I've got really pressing deadlines I have to work through. And I think this is particularly for larger projects. If you know where the end goal is, you know what the deadline is, start planning that out a little bit more. It can be very helpful. And frankly, I think it takes some of the stress away that comes with, project-based sort of submissions and social media, kind of just writing when we think more about time and scheduling and so forth, slowing down, so to say. So that's all I have for this week. I hope this all helps. It's been very interesting to kind of come back and talk about this. Just a reminder, next week we're talking about writing with and emotions. So we'll come back to some of the previous conversations we have about distraction-free, sort of working through your kind of own feelings or writing for emotions. We'll have a special guest chat as well. Also, stay tuned for the channel for a special interview that I'll post later on with the founders of Environment from A to Zine. Again, due to that cancellation we had 2 weeks ago in the middle of the stream. And other than that, we've got a couple streams coming up, and be sure to also check out the Writing Center for one-on-one appointments, as I mentioned at the top of the stream, and various other workshops and resources we have coming up. Other than that, take care, folks, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.